The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is Andre Mayette. I will be your host. Big thanks to Uku the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers, and big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another action-packed, fun-filled episode of the show. Today, we talk to Tara Audibert, who is a indigenous creator, writer, animator. She writes comics, does a lot of amazing work, and we get into all that during our talk. Very excited to have her on. I met her at the East Coast Comic Expo, and of course I was kind of there selling my own art, but also trying to recruit new guests for the show, and I was very happy that she was open to being on because, I'm always looking to talk to people of all kinds of creative walks of life that do different things, different projects, and have different experiences and can bring interesting stories to the show and unique perspectives based upon their own upbringings in life. I mean, in the comics world, I'm always trying as much as possible to get more female creators in the show. Unfortunately, I only have so many around that I can get in touch with. So when I can reach out to someone who is open to being on the show, if you yourself are a female creative person in the comics, nerd, acting, whatever field, reach out. I'd love to have you on the show. I don't want this show to just be a bunch of guys, and unfortunately a lot of nerdy things do tend to bend that way, but I really hate that stereotype, and I'm glad that I can make more efforts into breaking free of that. So regardless, I was very happy to have Tara on the show, and we had a lot of fun. Great talk, great conversation, and really like her. She's super cool, and I can't wait for her project. I don't want to tell you anything about it. You can listen to it in the episode, but she has some really cool animated projects coming down the pipeline, a movie particularly, which sounds awesome, and I'm very excited to see that become reality. And plus, it's just nice talking to creative people that are excited about creativity, about the act of creating, and about telling their own stories and using their instruments as a vehicle to get to the heart of the human condition and their own unique experience. And she really does that. And I find talking to creative types really inspirational to me in a way that it motivates me more to get more creative and do more things. And sometimes talking to someone like Tara really rubs off on someone like me and makes me want to really get going and do some more comic stuff. So I really got to get to that soon. On the home front, nothing too big coming up. Canada Day is just around the corner. Tara and I talk in this episode a bit about some of the darker part of Canadian history, particularly the residential schools and that sort of thing. But this is a day coming up to sort of celebrate our country. I know there are a lot of things in it that aren't worth celebrating, but there are a lot of people and a lot of history that is on the positive side. I'm looking forward to reflecting somewhat on that, but also, doing that in the perspective of some of the negative, but also just using it as an opportunity to spend time with friends and family. And as I mentioned many times, I'm a very busy person. So this will give me an opportunity to perhaps slow down a little bit, just relax, chill, have a few drinks, talk to friends, and just enjoy myself, which is something I'm trying to do more as I get up in years. I mean, I'm not old by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think I want to be old and then reflect back on all this time that I spent doing stuff that I perhaps could have spent, having more fun. So I'm working on doing that. I've recently completed a video game called The Quarry. I'm not sure everybody is video game world out there, but it's by the same guys that did the Until Dawn game, in which you sort of like watching a movie that you make the decisions and sort of changes where the story goes. Super good. I found that I really do dig those games, but now that I'm finished, I'm looking for a new one. So it's fun because it's fun in that I have a lot of things that I like to do. I like to read. I like to draw. I like to listen to records. Sometimes I can do a bunch of those things at once. But with the video games, it's something that I never did a lot of and then kind of did again. And now I'm sort of leaning more into as a good outlet to de-stress. So I'm thinking either the new Star Wars game, the Jedi Survivor, because I loved Fallen Order, or the Resident Evil 4 remake, which I'm also a big fan of. Those games and the remakes are great too. So one or the other. But yes, hopefully you, if you are Canadian listening to my show, get to enjoy your Canada Day coming up. And hopefully you have a long weekend because of it. And if you are not Canadian, that's great. If you know any Canadians, feel free to wish them a happy Canada Day. If not, reflect upon anyone in your life that may be Canadian or Canadian adjacent that you enjoy. But otherwise, perhaps I shouldn't talk anymore. Perhaps we should just get to this interview. So here it is, my talk with Tara Audibert.
Oh, I can hear you now.
There you go. Hey, perfect. How's it going?
You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, good.
Oh man, that shirt is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Good. Before we go too far, I need to know how to pronounce your last name so I don't butcher it later.
Sure, it's well, it doesn't really matter. It's English and French, but in French it's Audibert, like Odie like Garfield and Odie and bear like a bear.
I thought it was Audibert, is kind of what I was guessing. So
I'll answer to most anything. Yeah, Audibert, Audibert, Audibert.
Yeah, no, Audibert is cool. I like that. That's easy. That's certainly easier to remember. So yeah, usually I do a little intro aside from this, and I was like, when I introduced you, I wanted to make sure I did it right. And I was trying to find an interview or something online that would have said your name correctly, but I could not find anything like video wise that would have said it aloud. So I was like, crap. I have to ask her.
That's awesome. That's cool. That could be a cool page I could add to my website, just how to pronounce my name.
Yeah, like whenever you have to Google something, like I do trivia every Wednesday. I host it at a bar here I live in Truro, Nova Scotia. And
Okay, yeah. I don't know why I thought you were in Moncton.
Oh well, I was
just because we were there, I guess.
That's true. Yeah, I kind of assumed you were as well for the same reason.
I'm just up in Sunny Corner near outside of Miramichi there.
It sounds like it's such a delightful place to live. Sunny
It
Corner.
is. There's not a lot of people up here, so it's great.
It sounds like a Sesame Street knockoff, like just like a lovely place. There's puppets everywhere.
Come down to Sunny Corner. Now there's like about 3 houses that are burnt down on my street.
Oh no. Are you guys in the wildfire zone?
No, it's just I think like I'm not sure what's going on here, but of like everyone's either retired or something to do with drugs, I think. So it's like
that's not a Venn diagram you usually see too often.
yeah, I know. It's so weird. And we're probably like some of the youngest, I think we're the youngest people that live on this street.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a place, something, I don't know. I just like listen to my neighbor because she just has all the gossip and she's like,
yeah.
oh my God, yes, it had to do with something with this like missing kid and yada, yada, yada. And like that I don't know, like that there was some sort of like meth dealers or something. And then they ended up burning down the house up the road. And I mean, I don't know. She's like, I kind of believe her because she seems to know all the gossip from everyone. So I'm like,
say scratch it. I don't think it's Sesame Street anymore. I think it's like Twin Peaks. Like
yeah.
Idealistic sort of little town with the seedy dark underbelly that nobody really knows about. That's
yeah,
awesome.
I never knew. I'd go over there and she's like, oh my God, this one's that and this one's that. And I'm like, I have no idea. I had no idea.
Excellent.
No one bothers us, so that's fine.
Oh, well, where are you from originally?
St. John. I grew up in St. John, and like we moved out to like Quispamsis outside in like kind of like the suburbs. So I grew up in Kennebecasis Valley.
Oh wow! What'd your folks do?
My mom was a nurse, and my dad was he worked at the community college as the principal for a while, and then a counselor.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah.
So was writing and fiction and building these sort of worlds something that was always with you as a kid?
Well, I think as a kid, both of my parents, they did like these weird storytelling things that I've never heard of other parents doing. But my dad would tell stories, and my mom would tell stories. My dad would like act them out.
Oh, okay.
And do like this kind of like improv thing, and he'd grab just a bunch of hats and like back then everybody's like poor and we had like two channels. And if stuff, nothing was on for kids, this is what we did to entertain ourselves. So my mom would tell stories, and maybe it's like Little Red Riding Hood, or Goldilocks and the Three Bears, or whatever, like just any little story. But it would just be very like it would probably take about half an hour to tell these stories, and they would just get more elaborate and whatever else would happen. And my dad would just get a bunch of like costumes just out of our own clothes, like not whatever. So just grab
That's
a bunch of stuff.
amazing.
And he'd be
Wow.
putting on different hats, and the best was when he's playing like the wolf as the grandmother, and he had like a little hat, and then he'd get the hats mixed up, and then my mom would like make comments about that. And I just loved it because it was like, oh, we'd always be like, tell Goldilocks and the Three Bears, but it's because we remembered the last one was so funny, but this one was going to be just totally different. So I think I got a lot of storytelling from that. And my mom's family, like they just loved Warner Brothers, like Bugs Bunny and all this sort of thing. And they would tell, like they would do the whole skit of all of these, animated little shorts of whatever, Marvin the Martian or whatever, Bugs Bunny, whoever, and back and forth, and they had them all memorized. And I just remember thinking, like, this is the epitome of entertainment. Like, so I knew that animation was cool, and it was cool to adults, and storytelling was cool. And if you could make stuff up on the spot, that was pretty cool. So I
Wow.
think it just was like, that's cool stuff. I should do that too.
Yeah, that's super cool. Like that's
Hmm.
incredibly inventive parents. Like,
It's just
like
like when you're poor, I think you're just like, you got to do, figure out
yeah.
stuff to do and figure out how to entertain everybody. And my dad was just really good with kids, I think, too. Like he learned, like he reminds me of that guy from Modern Family, the dad. Like he knew magic tricks and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, right.
And he would, for all of our birthdays until we got too old to figure out the tricks, he was a magician that came to our parties, and he would perform all these tricks and like, make things vanish, and like, I don't know, just amazing tricks.
Uh,
And I think that was part of it, like the storytelling. It was always, we were always very involved in a family. It was never like, these are the adults doing this and the kids are doing that. Like everything was like, everybody's just doing it. So it was kind of
no
fun.
wonder you got into doing books for children. You grew up in a Robert Munch book, for God's sake. That's crazy. I love this. This is amazing. You don't hear a lot of these like delightful story, like especially when I talk to creative types. Often it's like, when I got into some kind of creative career, like comic artists or whatever, it's like my parents were really upset. Like they wanted me to be a lawyer or a
Oh
doctor.
yeah, they didn't want me to go in anything like that for as a career for sure. So that was
Oh,
the same sort of deal. But it was with a weird thing, because when we were younger, my parents told all of us, like me and my brother and sisters, that we could be anything we wanted to be.
mhm.
So when you're young, you're like, I can be anything that I want to be. So I was like, well, I want to be an artist, obviously. And then my brother wanted to be a giraffe. And my sister was like, well, I want to be a Catholic priest because they only work on Sundays. And so it's like, my parents didn't tell us any different for any of those things, but like mine was the only thing that was probably actually doable. My sister didn't become a priest, and my brother
Brother
didn't
didn't
become
make
a
it to
giraffe.
be a giraffe.
No.
Flunked
But
out
it
of
always
giraffe school,
stuck
did it?
with me.
Yeah.
And then when I got to high school, I like all that time I was like, I'm gonna be an artist. I'm gonna be an artist because I just like doing art. And they were like, yeah, well, we forgot to tell you like about the money part. Like you like money and you like eating and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, I do like money and eating. Though both of those things are very important to me. And they're like, well, but you also have heard of a starving artist like that. And I was like, I did hear of that term, starving artist.
Oh
And they were
wow.
like, oh, you don't want to end up being that person. And all I could picture was myself, and also a starving artist. I don't know why. Like, how do you know they're an artist? Are they holding up their canvases and
Yeah.
like painting
They're
them
just
as they're
on the street
homeless?
with the easel and the paint. Just
Yeah, it's just like it makes no sense. So, but anyways, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to be starving. And they're like, well, you should pick something as a career and then go to school for that. And then just you're already good as doing art, and then just do that on the side, like as a hobby. So I was like, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. And I
sounds like
guess I'll
they're getting
try.
using their storytelling powers for bad as well as good.
Yeah.
Like painting a real picture of you starving in an alley
Oh
somewhere.
man, he's wearing all the hats. Look, you're gonna be starving. You're not gonna be able to eat.
Yeah, he's got
Oh,
like the
I believe him
old style
too.
like 1950s like black and white hobo costume on with the tin can and the bindle.
Too
Like,
bad she died. Oh, because she was an artist.
yeah, full Groucho Marx or like Charlie Chaplin. Just like that's amazing.
Well, they did. They told me so. They told me the first thing, and then they told me the second story, and I believe both of them. And I think I believed the first one more, maybe because I was just younger when I heard it. I don't know, but I was like, well, if I can't be an artist, then I guess I want to be a marine biologist so I can swim with dolphins, of course, because that's the next best thing to being an artist.
And that's all marine biologists do. I'm sure they just
Doesn't make any sense. So like, okay, well, go take your Bachelor of Science to start for that at least. And like, I, I just wanted to work for like SeaWorld and I don't know, just be like riding whales and stuff around all this. And like now I'm like, thank God I didn't do
I was
that.
gonna
Like,
say, I
this
think
is
a marine biologist working
horrible.
at SeaWorld would be like the most soul-killingest job you
Yeah,
possibly
like that
can
would
do.
be the worst because I
Yeah,
love animals.
yeah.
And so I'm glad that that didn't come to fruition, but I ended up, just bailing out of sciences. I think I did good for 1 year, and then after that, it just wasn't my thing. So I ended up failing out. And then I went to my parents and I said, well, I'm just going to take a break from school, which they weren't happy about either. And just got a bunch of jobs, different jobs. I was a door-to-door knife salesman, and I just did
Are
crazy.
you 100 years old? When were you doing? At what age were you
Oh, it's
doing door-to-door
crazy.
knife salesman?
I moved to Halifax, and
What year was this? I didn't
oh my
know.
God, this was like in the 90s, I guess.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine there were still door-to-door knife salesmen in the 90s. I
Yes,
just
dude. They probably still do it. It's through a company called Cutco. And
Cutco. My
the
God.
best knives ever. Like, if you can get a door-to-door Cutco salesman, like, I know that Cutco doesn't sponsor this, but oh my God, it's the best knives ever.
Well, they
Uh,
showed with that endorsement. My God.
as a Cutco's, like, when I was selling them, I couldn't afford them because they're like $1,000 knives. It's like ridiculous. But I would just be like, oh my God, someday I'll be able to afford Cutco. Not yet, but someday.
I got the Criterion channel recently, and I just like watched this documentary called Salesman, and it's about a Bible salesman like in the
Oh my
60s.
God.
It was just following it's a documentary just following four of them as they went around to small different communities trying to sell Bibles and going into people's houses. And
Oh
like
my
it
God.
was like if you ever sat like I remember one time at a con, my art table was beside this woman selling these felt dolls she was making. They were like little like Pokemon and stuff, but she handmade them all. They're very nice, but it was
Oh
like the
yeah.
hardest sell. She was like hard sell. Like anybody came by, like hold one, and they'd be like, "Isn't it nice? You really should take it home." I this like you're a proud papa, and that's your baby now. You need to buy that and take it home. And I remember sitting
Yeah, when you
beside her,
touch it.
just cringing about how but like watching this movie was the same thing. It's just like these poor housewives that are like, oh, I don't
Oh,
want to agree to this without my husband here. And they're like, oh, well, does he have a birthday coming up? He'd be really surprised to get this Bible. Look how nice it is. And it's just like, oh
God,
my God.
that's horrible. That's
But
horrible. I was never that kind of
no,
sales.
okay, good.
In fact, like with the like this is going to be like a little sales pitch for this or whatever, but with the Cutco thing, like it's definitely a pyramid scheme, like it's full on pyramid scheme. But the way that it worked was you would get paid, like unlike other pyramid schemes where you only get paid if you sold stuff.
Mhm.
This one you get paid like I think you get like $20 just to show it, and it would take like an hour. And at the time it was like, minimum wage was $5. So I'm like, well, geez, that's $20 an hour if
Yeah.
I can line up a bunch of people to sell to. And first you just sell to your friends and family. So it
It's
was
like
just like a weird thing where I'm like, can I just show you this thing and I'll get $20, right? But you got to sign their name up. That's the little
yeah.
caveat. So then if they buy something, you don't get the $20, you get the percentage of whatever they bought.
Wow.
And a lot of times it would be like, I just wanted the $20 because it would be like I'll make more money if I can
Yeah.
just sell, like, do this more. And
Faster too,
everybody
yeah.
wanted to buy it because they were such good knives. And it was just like,
Maybe you're just such a good salesperson.
maybe, but I don't think so. I really
we
wasn't trying the whole time. I'm like, look, they're really good, but like, just we'll book another time or whatever. They're like, no, no, we'll buy it now. We want to help you. I'm like,
well, that's good. You had supportive people. a friend of mine invited me and my wife over because they're like some friend of theirs signed them up for a free cooking show. And I was like, and they're like, yeah. So then we wanted to bring people over to come do this. And my wife wasn't feeling well, so my brother came because he was visiting. And we were joking earlier about pyramid schemes and all this sort of stuff. And then we get to the place and like, so what is this? And they were like, oh, a friend signed us up. These people come over and cook, and they asked me to bring one of my own frying pans. And I was like, all right, this seems weird.
Oh
And then the
no.
car pulled up. I looked out the window, and I do work for websites for the town of Truro, and they did some kind of a program where they're helping local people get websites during the pandemic. And I did one for these people, which was an obvious pyramid scheme. It's it's this cookware you buy that's like it's like $6,000 for like
Nice.
4 pans or something, and then they just come in and cook and show how bad your pans are, how great
Like
theirs
this,
are.
your pans are practically killing you. You
Yeah,
need pans.
exactly.
You're gonna eat the rest of your life, right?
Man, you
man.
definitely have done this before. All of that stuff. And my brother, I remember he looked at me because like 5 minutes in, we all knew what was going on, but we're all just too polite to really just shut it down.
Yeah.
So like my brother drew like a little pyramid on his hand with the pen marker we had and just showed it to me. And I was like standing there watching this pitch, and I glanced at him, and I did everything not to just burst out laughing.
Oh man.
And at the end, when they're like, oh, if you sign like 6 people up, you get like 50% off this $500 pan. It's like, oh my God. Oh man. Yeah, that's amazing you did that. I can't believe it. Even in the 90s, they were still doing it. Like Glenn Ross.
Oh yeah. I at the same time I did a bunch of things like selling steak knives in a parking lot one time.
Oh, no
Yeah,
murders happen?
yeah. It's like not steak knives, sorry, steak coupons was worse. Yeah, and they were just like, yeah, just go up to people that are coming out of this place and ask them if they want steak coupons. I'm like, this is so random. Like, I did that for a day. I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's just ridiculous. Like, and very weird. It was like one of those. Well, I guess back then, I went to Halifax to try to get a job in animation and stuff, but
What did you end up finishing in school? What was did you
so I failed out of sciences, and I did a couple of different jobs, like I was a loans officer for a bank.
Oh my God.
And different crazy things that had nothing to do with art. And then my aunt found out there was an animation program here in Miramichi, and she's like, well, there's this animation program, and we just kind of like put 2 and 2 together, like there's animation on TV, therefore someone's not starving, they're making money, so that should help or whatever, or work. So
it would seem that way until you read about like the animators doing
so
like,
yeah. And I did finish and took an animation program there, and I also took fine arts at NASCAD. So I didn't finish my Bachelor of Fine Arts, but I'm very near finishing it.
Okay.
Someday I should finish that. Yeah.
So in animation then, it's kind of where you're.
Yeah. I did animation, and through the program that I took, though, it was like animation and graphic design. So we learned like every aspect of animation, including character design, backgrounds, like audio recording, editing, like every single aspect of it. So when I got out, I was able to like create my own, shorts or little things, do websites and stuff like that too. And
what mode would you have been using? Was this been Flash? If it was like
I learned it on Flash. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we learned on paper, and I ended up learning Flash when I got out of school, and we had just learned on paper, and it was just at the time when Flash had just started coming out, and I think there was one company in Halifax that was using it, Kaleidoscope, and a bunch of my classmates went there, and we were just like, like we went for a tour, and we're just like, that's crazy. They were drawing on tablets, like without looking at the screen or looking at what they're drawing, and we're just like, that's crazy. Like I could never do that. And come to find out that all the jobs are digital, so I ended up having to just learn it. And like, there's a group of about 4 of my friends, we just kind of like taught ourselves how to do it, which is, when I think back about that now, is crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways, we taught ourselves and then presented ourselves and ended up getting a job working on a TV series called, I think it was Oliver's Adventures. And it won a bunch of awards, like Juno Awards, and was really popular in Australia. But took about 2 weeks to learn how to, draw using a tablet versus, drawing on paper. But yeah, yeah. And then I've been using that like till today, 25 years later. So
That's awesome. I'm a graphic designer as well, but that's my day job. So
what do you use for graphic design, if I can ask?
mostly Corel Draw, actually.
Oh, no way. That's
Most
surprising.
of what I do is in the sign industry, like, but I do have my own business doing websites and social media stuff. But I learned in school through Illustrator and like Photoshop and all that sort of stuff. We did do Flash as well.
Oh, okay.
And a little bit of Maya, but that was just sort of us allowed to play with it. It wasn't really part of the curriculum.
Yeah, we did some Maya too, but it's like I would never try to go and say that I would know that for a job or anything like
I
that.
liked Flash, all right, but it's kind of obviously it quickly became sort of less important as the years piled on and more other stuff came around. But that's really cool. Very neat.
Well, I end up doing everything in Flash, like much to the dismay of publishers and any
Really?
other people who want to adjust art that don't deal with Flash at
Don't deal
all.
with Flash.
But I do it for like illustrating, children's books, comics, the whole 9 yards. I do
Oh,
it all
really?
in Flash. Yeah,
That's
I
cool.
I just really like doing like drawing it in vector, and it just helps you with your line a little bit. So I just like love that. Yeah.
I just for like personal drawing, I've just gotten into using a drawing tablet. I used to do it old school all the time, and then a friend of mine was selling like a high end one, and I was like, well, I'm gonna give this a try. And so I just did something in pencil, took a photo of it instead of even scanning it, and just inked it. And I was like, what have I been doing? Like, this is so much faster, so much better.
Yeah, the undo, and then you're in your sketchbook and you're like, how come I can't undo?
Yeah, or just like getting ink all over everything. Like I remember trying to use like the ink, like the nub pens and all that, and like just every once in a while I would like glob a bunch onto something and have to try to fix it by working around it. And it's like, this is garbage. I hate it. So yeah, no, it's neat how I mean, you kind of can do things one way for so long, and then you eventually have to like have some grand experience to convince you that there's another way that's probably better.
Yeah, I'm just at the point now where I'm switching over to Toon Boom.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
What's
literally like
behind that one?
in the midst of that now. I'm working on a feature film now,
Oh wow.
and my go-to is was Adobe Animate, but I did a TV show, and we did that in using Adobe Animate, and halfway through the show I found out that they had taken away some aspects that they had before for special effects. So I ended up having to hire like different people than I already had for special effects so that they could do it in After Effects as opposed to in Flash, which was crazy. So it ended up like costing production money and setbacks and stuff like that, just because they had taken stuff away. And it's like, it was always there before. So I'm just switching over. All of the big studios are switched over to Toon Boom, and the stuff that it can do is just like, it's pretty, I'm impressed. I'm just still learning myself, but like watching the demos and stuff, I'm just like, that's amazing.
Awesome. So the show you worked on, Oliver, that was or Oliver, was it Oliver's friend?
Oliver's Adventures, yeah.
What was Oliver? I feel like I remember the show. Was he like
He was like a little redheaded kid, and then he had these adventures. It was kind of crazy because like called uh Ollie's Under the Bed Adventures, I think, to start, but Roly Poly Olie
I remember that show.
was also on at the same time. And then they found out that we were having this Ollie, but it was Ollie and theirs was Olie or something. Anyways, they sent a cease and desist. So I ended up having to like switch the name to Oliver's Adventures, Oliver's Under the Bed Adventures. But it was him, and he had a bunch of toys that one was like a lizard, and one was like a Tarzan and then a Jane.
Yeah,
And
I'm watching a little clip of it now. I have no memory of this show. And like
yeah,
I was probably around like I was born 85, so this is probably around when I would have been, like late 90s. I may have been catching some of this stuff. So
no, that would have been like well, yeah, no, I think it would have come out in 2000.
yeah,
Was
well,
it 99, 2000?
I mean the bad guy looks familiar, the bald kid. So
Oh my God, is it Bling Bling? Was like a rapper kid.
Oh, that was the enemy back then in the early 2000s, the rapper
Yeah,
kid.
he's this little rapper rich kid. He's like Richie Rich, except his name was Bling Bling. His parents must have paid for him to be a rapper because he'd have these concerts and stuff. And I didn't honestly like, you're like, when you're doing animation, you're just like, you're doing your part and you're watching your part to make sure that there's no issues with it hooking up. But half the time you don't watch the whole TV show. So it was like, I don't know what's going on in this crazy show. I do remember his little rap, and it was like, I'm bling bling, him sing, sing.
Genius. It's
And
funny because
I'll never be able to forget that the rest of my life. Like,
it's especially when it comes to like kid stuff. I was having this conversation with someone the other day because I just watched for the first time. I never saw it as a kid, but Time Bandits, like the
oh yes, yeah.
And I liked Terry Gilliam. I'd never seen that one. I was like, well, I'll watch it. And I watched it the other day, and I was like, it's so much fun. And it's definitely has a lot of stuff for kids, but a lot of stuff for adults. And it has a bit of a mean spirit at its center. And you're like, you don't really get that.
Yeah.
The ending ends in such a mean spirited way. You're like, oh, you don't get that in like kids movies or shows anymore. It's all sort of like it was like this magical time where they weren't afraid to scare kids a little bit, or at least like, do something.
I love all that stuff. I loved all that stuff when I was a kid. And I think too, like with the things that I like to work on, they run in that same, kind of genre, in that I want things to be entertaining for adults. Kids don't have to get every single little aspect of it, because they won't.
No, they definitely won't.
They're only going to get to the level that they can get to it, and that's fine. But a lot of these things, you're going to have to watch them with adults, or in the case of me having to make them for children, I have to watch it like hundreds of times. I want it to be entertaining for me, and entertaining for any other adults that have to sit around and watch it. So I try to do that stuff too. I remember like Watership Down.
Oh yeah.
And
that one I watched like a few years ago. And I loved it, but man, oh man, can you imagine kids watching that? Like,
I know, like that. I watched that. It was on, must have been on one of the 2 channels that we had, but they're like, oh, it's cartoons. Here you go. Like, and then they walked, like, the adults left, and then we're just like, oh my God, like, what is going on here? But I just presumed, I learned some lessons about it, and same with other things that were a little bit scary and a little bit adult, but like those were things that I tried to aspire to. And with my work as well too, like something that is going to elicit, crying, or is going to elicit fear, or is it, just a little bit of emotion, and it doesn't have to all just be like, just subdued for children kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that perhaps not forcing, I guess, but like giving an entertaining way for kids to experience some of those things might better prepare them for when they have to face them in real life. If you shelter
absolutely, and it's entertaining. I remember, a lot of times I get asked when I'm like doing pitches or things like that, they want things that are for children, that are about children the same age, which I find is weird, because when you're a kid, what you want to do is be growing up, and you're always thinking about what's up, like what's the next thing there, like what's it going to be like when I'm, if I'm 5, what's it going to be like when I'm 10, or what's it going to be like when I'm a teenager? Holograms. And it's like, do you remember that show, or you heard of the show?
Holograms, what you said?
Yeah, I know they made like a new live action movie, I think, but the original show was about these like, I guess they were teens, but they were living on their own. There was no other adults, so I'm going to presume adult 20 somethings that were that inherited a mansion, and they also had a rock band, and then they
were truly
got orphans. That was like another aspect of it. So they ran an orphanage in this mansion, and then also went on and did like rock shows as Gem or whatever, which is like, that's crazy, but it's like, I want to be that, right? Yeah. So you want to watch that because you want to see like, oh man, what's it gonna like? Oh, like, oh, they're kissing boys, or maybe they're about to kiss a boy, or whatever. And I find that what they're always trying to do now is for the kids' age, and kids, like, I don't know. As a child, I don't think that's what children want. They want to see what that next step is. And even if something has a, like there's the orphanage kids plus the rock star. So there's 2 aspects or 2 levels there that you can like think about or aspire to, or whatever it is.
I
And I
guess
think
like
that's
it's been
cool.
a while since I watched, like, my friends have children now. I'm at that age where all my friends are having kids. So I watch incidentally if I'm around and the kids watching something, I'll sit in and watch a bit of it when I'm talking to their parents or whatever. And normally it's like you're right, it does seem very like Paw Patrol or like
Yeah.
was it Bluey is the other one that like the kids are watching, and I was like, it's just a bunch of little kids having little kid problems, and it's like I get that, but I feel like when I was a kid, it was like I don't know, Ninja Turtles. They were like ninjas that
Yes,
lived in the sewers
exactly. Like,
that were
would you like to live in the sewer? Like,
yeah, and eat pizza all the
as
time
a
and fight
teenager.
Shredder and aliens and whatever, like all that. Like it just seems like the fantastical part of it is kind of removed for something a little more realistic.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm sure that's not everywhere. I'm sure there's lots of shows that kind of. I mean, obviously, Paw Patrol is a bit of a different. Their
And
kids
I
and
think it's like,
cops somehow.
I don't know, but it's up to the creators to take that into consideration and make things. I think, or when I guess I would hope that creators are like when I'm doing what I'm doing is I'm trying to make things that me as a kid would want to watch,
I
you
feel
know.
like you probably
And
hit a wall a lot by like the producers or the boss.
definitely, yeah. If you try to, pitch things and then they're like, oh, well, we're looking for something that's more for younger kids. And it's like, well, this is my idea for younger kids. Like, this is what I would want to watch if I was able to watch TV. Like,
Well, it seems
yeah,
like it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, obviously, if all you put out there is stuff for kids, then that's what's going to test well because that's all they really have to watch. So then they're going to say, well, this tests
exactly.
good. If you don't give them something different every once in a while, you're not going to get anything like any real ingenuity or.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. So, when did you like break off and start doing your own thing? Was it just mostly through the studio
Well,
system?
yeah, I worked for did a bunch of different shows, Johnny Test and a show called Delilah and Julius, this crazy
I
spy show.
remember. I remember
And
that one.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I do.
I hated Delilah like so much. And there's
She's only half the show.
there's a bunch of scenes. Oh, she was just so annoying. It's like, oh, you're supposed to be smart. And like she was just always like trying to put a just make just she was just a bummer every time. And she's like, well, why can't we do like we should do this? It's against the law. Or it's like this is a cartoon. Just go with the flow and stop trying to put the stop everything. So any chance I could, I would just beat her up because there was always bad guys like fighting them and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'd always like ask the director, like, is it okay if I just like get this great big? She was fighting like a giant plant, and I was like, can I get the plant to just take her and like smash her against the wall a bunch in the background, and then did like the kind of like the alien thing where it came out and was like kind of about to bite her, and then another little thing comes out and tries to bite her, and another time where a bad guy smashed her against like a jukebox or something, and I was like, can I just have him like smash her, and like just she smashes and breaks all the glass. He's like, sure. Like, okay.
That's
And that's
awesome.
how I had my fun back then. Yeah.
I feel like that's a unique thing you can do with animation. If you're like I'm writing on a live action TV show, like, can you just have Buffy,
Yeah.
you have Xander get like beat the shit out of every episode? Just have him slam his face to the wall about 18 times.
Oh geez. Yeah, so I did that for a while. I did animation, and I ended up getting tendonitis in my uh like in my arm, and I just couldn't do animation anymore. It was like a crazy schedule. It's you have to do about 1,400 drawings a week. And there's like a crazy quota. I was working like sometimes 6 7 days a week, like 14-hour days, trying to get stuff done. And it just yeah, I just had like, I think back then we used to call it like an animator blowout, like a tire blowout. You have an arm blowout, and I was just like, no, and I couldn't even hold a stylus anymore. So it was kind of crazy. And at the same time, so I got off like some medical leave, but with animation, it's all just contract based. So it's
Yeah.
not like, hey, you can get unemployment or anything like that, really. So I had some like a medical thing for a few weeks, a couple months or something, maybe through unemployment. But after that, there wasn't, much I could do. And it was kind of scary. I remember back in the Vanna White days, I don't know, was it Vanna White? What the,
It's still her day. She's still there.
oh my God.
Wheel of Fortune.
She got her legs insured
Oh,
because, remember, maybe not her.
Might have been her.
One
She
that
always wore
sat on
those
in
dresses.
the desk of Entertainment Tonight, actually.
Oh, Mary something Hart. Is that her name?
Yes,
Yeah,
Mary Hart. She had her
yeah.
legs insured because you could see them under the desk, or that was the rumor or whatever. And as animators, we were all like, "Oh my God, we better get our arms insured because what happens if they, you break your arm or something like that?" And then come to find out, like it costs a ridiculous amount to get like that kind of arm insurance. And if you do, the only thing that it covers is if it gets cut off. So it's like, oh, okay, so it's
The
just
real
not.
chance of that happening.
So not if your boss just wrecks it by like making you draw a lot.
Yeah.
So, it's always good. I just like to remind everybody so you don't wreck your instruments or whatever. Just like you gotta stretch like every hour. It's very important to like get up and make sure you're doing like stretches and doing other exercises, not just drawing all the time.
Mm.
So I ended up going and finding a job teaching at the college that I graduated from. So I taught at in the animation program for about 8 years there. And while I was there, sort of, I guess the same thing happens. It's 8 years of teaching, and I was teaching all the students how to make their own shorts and stuff. And I just kind of sat back and I was inspired by what they were doing, and I was like, I would like to be doing this. And then I was like, hey, I could be doing this. Like, why not? And I got a kind of an offer to work on a comic, and this was while I was still teaching, so I was kind of doing that on the side. And it was the residential school comic called Lost Innocence, and I had read that story, and my friend Brandon Mitchell wrote it, and I was like, that's crazy. And I thought it was a story that he had made up, and then come to find out, like, all this stuff about residential schools. And this was like in 2007 or something, I think. And like, I had no idea that any of that had happened, and nobody really did, I guess. I had heard
It wasn't widely talked about. It wasn't.
no. And
Wasn't
like,
any
even
history book I read in school. So.
the things I had heard it wasn't like what was in the comic. And I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy stuff. Like I had, my relatives had talked about residential schools a bit, but just kind of more of a fear because they hadn't gone to residential schools, but they got it like Indian day school, and that was all run by nuns. And so I'd heard stories about like how they had abused, everybody in their class, like beat them with rulers or just beat them, or amongst other things, like to embarrass them and different, just everything. So seeing that with this residential school, and I was like, that's just crazy. And to know that it was just, the last one closing like 1989 or the 90s. I'm not even sure. I heard there was another one that closed in 1994 or something. And I was like, that's like, when I was a kid, like that could have been me, like, thank God it wasn't, but it's like, that's crazy town. So,
well, Canadians, I think we get pretty smug sometimes thinking that, because we don't have like a civil war or slavery or anything like that in our history, that, our history is clean. And no, it's not. I mean, what measuring stick do you need to say what's the worst? But it's certainly full of a lot of horrible things. That's a big one, especially in the past, was it 5-6 years?
Yeah, and then now they're finding out.
Yeah.
Well, at the time Brandon Mitchell had written the comic, and they asked me to do the illustrations, and I did. I got paid and everything, and then they had a real hard time to get it put out. So they're trying to find some funding to get it like published and printed and all of that. And I think they got a portion of the funding, which I thought was kind of amusing, from the Anglican Church. And I was like, oh well, good, good for them at least.
Yeah.
But the guy had to end up publishing it of his own, like just out of his own pocket kind of thing. And I know that it went into schools and things like that. And a copy of it's actually in the archives of Canada. So I was like, that was really cool. And that was
that would be probably
good to be a part of.
Kind, really, right? Like there weren't really.
Yeah, like at the time, like nobody wanted to publish it. Nobody really. They were like, it's quite graphic. And let me tell you that the way that I drew it initially, like they made me pull it back like several times, and it was like not as graphic as the commercial that they have for the Heritage Moments or Heritage Minutes there. Like there's a commercial and that's quite graphic.
Yeah.
Like I would say compared to this comic, like this comic's very pulled back but nobody, we're just kind of like, oh, I didn't want to touch it. And I'm not sure if anything else more happened like after, the burial sites were discovered or things like that. But I think it's something important. Like these stories need to be told. And, I was glad I was able to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And that just kind of like, inspired me to keep doing more of those things, I guess.
Mhm.
Something weird happened after I did that comic. I ended up on a list, and I don't know how I got on the list or what, like, I don't know how that transpired, but it really helped my whole career for comics and everything. But I was on this list of 10 women 10 Indigenous women that were comic illustrators in all of North America.
I was going to say,
And
how many were
so
there? That seems
I was surprised there was 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I was
me
like,
too.
this is amazing. And I was like, no, I'm one of them. Like, this is crazy. And
Awesome.
this is like in the early 2000s, I guess. So when that comic came out, and then after that, like I was getting, other comics, other books, like mostly from the States, honestly. So I was really lucky that I ended up, and I think it was because I ended up on that list. Because if you would Google like Indigenous women, and a lot of the things that people wanted me to work on were, you really needed a woman to work on it, or they wanted a female illustrator and also to be Indigenous. I did like a comic that was about against violence against women,
Mhm.
and they really wanted like an Indigenous woman to do that, and
That
a
seems
couple
incredibly
other
progressive,
things.
even from that time period. It only
I
seems
know.
like in the past, like 10 years, that it's going to become important that they get, even people, the voice characters of certain, ethnicities that are of that ethnicity. I do another
Yes. Yeah.
podcast, which is, we watched that old X-Men cartoon from the 90s.
Yes.
We
I
review
love
every
that.
episode. Yeah, so we have there's the like when it's now that it's coming back, they're recasting some of the roles like Jubilee and stuff with an actual Asian actress
Yes.
and stuff like that. But we had Lawrence Bain on it to do the voice of Cable, who is indigenous and from the Toronto area. It's funny,
Hey,
yeah.
that's
And
so cool. Oh
he
my
was talking,
God.
he was talking about that. I was floored because I don't know. Are you into Pink Floyd at all? There was
A
a big music video for one of theirs back in the day that featured like a young Native American man who was played by him, and
oh my
it was
God, no
yeah, it
way.
was like I was pretty floored by that as well. But yeah, it
That's
seems
crazy.
like it's only like the past 10 years that people seem to have actually made an effort, and maybe it's because the public has demanded it to actually have the right voices, telling the stories instead of just
Oh
putting them
yeah,
anymore.
for sure. Like yeah, and yeah, I don't know. It helps. It helps with storytelling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if anything, it's just representation in general, I think is incredibly helpful just to let people know. Like several people I've had in the show, like comic people that have, uh, you know, um, actually, it's funny because an old roommate of mine was on the show. He works for Marvel now. He's from
Oh,
Newfoundland, but he is of indigenous origin. I'm not sure what particular tribe, but he was telling me that like when he was a kid, he remembers playing like cowboys and Indians, and like the cowboys were the heroes, and then when his mom saw him doing this and like got after him, telling him like you're indigenous, you're one of these, and he said it was like a rude awakening for him. He said it was like finding, like, he watched Power Rangers when he was a kid. He said it's like finding out you came from a long line of putties. like because they're always the bad guy to him, right? So like, I was just like, wow, like
oh,
it really opened my
man.
eyes to that idea because you don't think about it in those contexts until.
I feel his pain. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a
I do feel his
similar?
pain because we also played Cowboys and Indians and same thing. We're like,
Uh,
you're the Indians. We're just like, no, I want to be Cowboys.
so did you guys not have like a deep understanding of that like when you were younger?
No, I even I was tell this funny story because I was driving in my parents' car in the back seat, and we're driving up to my grandmother's house, and then I'm looking out the window, and I just been watching like must have been Lone Ranger or something like that, and the like this group of Indians had come and scalped all the good people or whatever. And I was looking out the window and it just looked like planes out there. It must have been the fall in New Brunswick. And I was like, Mom. And then they're like, what? And I'm like, I'm scared of Indians. And then the whole car just bursts out laughing. And they're like, you're in a car full of Indians. Like, what are you scared of?
The danger's in here.
Yeah, they're like, we're all Indians. Like, they're just laughing. And then I'm like, no, 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 not us Indians, the bad Indians, the ones that scalp everyone. And they're like, there's no difference. Like, they're just like, there's not bad Indians and good Indians, they're just Indians. And then I was like, yeah, but they scare me or whatever. So I was like, that was my idea from the entertainment and all that, even though I knew what my family was like and I knew everything about our culture, our stories going as far back. And I didn't know that any of my family had skinned anybody or anything like that, or was never told anything to that extent. But still, because of entertainment, that's what I believe. So it's like, it's weird. I hope that I can be a part of, like, creating entertainment that shows there's like a different side of the culture. And even that it's not just all these, like, it's not just teepees and feathers, powwows, that
The
there's a lot
Pocahontas
more
vibe.
to the culture.
I feel like, yeah, up until a certain period, it seems like there's a lot of it now. But yeah, like before that, what did little girls have to, or boys have to really look at?
Yeah, I don't know.
Pocahontas, which is a terrible version of that story. What else, right? So
I didn't want to be. I wanted to be Wonder Woman. I didn't. There wasn't any that, and even amongst superheroes, she was a lone heroine as well too. So hopefully, I can create characters that are female, indigenous, but just heroes that kids can look up to that are different, I guess.
That's fantastic. So like the books that you've worked on, I tried to track down what I could before we talked. It was hard to find anything I could read a lot of online, but
yeah, I did. I'm working on now the series called JoJo McCoons, which was kind of cool because it just started out as like a one little story. It's a chapter book, but it's in a lot of schools, and it ended up winning awards and stuff. So I'm working on the third in the series, and I just got a contract to do 3 more. So there's going to be a total of 6 of these books, and it's just about this little indigenous girl and like kind of her adventures. And it's not about that at all. It's modern day, so it's not about teepees or powwows or anything like that. It's just about her doing her thing. She lives on reserve, and I think she goes to a school with like a lot of other indigenous kids, but it's mixed, and there's different teachers who are non-indigenous and are indigenous, and just all these little different things that she thinks about the world in a bigger sense from what she's learned on reserve, and kind of some like little funny things. But I think it's important because I've never seen a little indigenous girl in books, and I think that that's important, number one. And then number two, that it's just like she's just kind of a girl that, like a little kid that's just doing little kid stuff. It's not like everything isn't doesn't have to lead back to indigenousness in some way. It's just I was a kid, and these are the things that happen.
Yeah, and to me that's more important than just something that's like overtly like, hey, like it's all about indigenous, because it's like it's just the stories of real people, or at least the real people.
Yeah, exactly. Like for me, like the things that are important to me when I was growing up is just like sense of humor, this storytelling. Like that was always an aspect throughout my entire childhood. Like my grandmother was a great storyteller as well. All of my aunts, my uncles, like everyone in my family, they're just storytellers. So I think it was inevitable now when I look back that I would be a storyteller as well. But that is definitely an aspect of it. And I think you see that a lot, but there's stories, and the way that I want to tell them is the way that I hear them. So there's like a lot of like little mistakes or little things, and they end up being funny because you're trying to tell a story, and that's what has come into your head. So I like to leave those things in. And I do like a lot of little different shorts, and I would go and record my aunt or record my mom telling me stories, and I just want them to tell it the way that they would tell me the story. And I didn't edit it much at all, unless there was like a little like a weird pop or something. But the way that they're telling the story is not edited, and I never wanted to present these stories in a way that is like refined or scripted or read. And just so I could share these stories the way that I heard them, because it just it's just a nice way to share them, I guess.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So, can you talk about the movie, or is that like under wraps?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Anyways, I can talk a little bit about it. Um,
Don't want
it's
to get
called,
you sued or anything. Or...
no, it's all my
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's all my creation. So
No,
it's
perfect.
really cool. I applied for some funding through Canada Council for the Arts for originally was like an idea that I had for a short, and it's about a fox and a demon. It's called Guaxos Naga Wahansis. So Guaxos is fox in Wolastoqey, and Wahansis is a tiny demon. So that's this story or this idea that I had about a fox who kind of runs away from her problems, and she runs away to this dark forest and ends up finding a demon, and this little demon just kind of keeps like bothering her and doing things to her, and she's just trying to like deal with her own problems already, and she comes to find out that he's also dealing with his own demons as well, and she realizes even though that he's like kind of her worst enemy there, that he's also her only friend, and kind of what happens with that.
Sounds
But
awesome.
yeah, it has a little bit to do. It's kind of my own personal experiences, but it also is about like having your own mental illness, and then having to sometimes you have to just live with someone else that has a mental illness, and it's like I'm already dealing with like with my mental illness, and like your mental illness is so much bigger, and it's just these combined mental illnesses is just like and then what happens, but there's just no way of getting around that. And part of that is our stories that I've heard from residential school survivors as well, and that's like just it's a common thing, and something that I wanted to talk about in a way that could be understood by adults for sure, and then but also that kids could understand it, so that it's it's in a cartoon form, and it's doing anthropomorphized characters, so that it's not just blatant like this is this and that is that, but that hopefully people will be able to get what they think out of the story, I guess.
I think it's funny because a couple things. Like fiction has this way, because I'm a big horror movie nut too, and when you talk about like movies about like grief or like people dealing with trauma, like I always say, man, like if you lose someone, go watch The Babadook. Like if you haven't seen that movie, that's like the greatest movie about grief I've ever seen.
Yes,
And
yes.
then like thinking about like movies like was Inside Out and like things like that like show you how like kids to deal with like your emotions and and how big everything is,
Yes.
and like all that sort of stuff. I feel like it's so like I'm so amazed with how deep some of Pixar and some of those other things can get with kids movies, and helping them to understand. Like I was talking to a woman, I think it was my massage therapist, who was talking because I'd watched Encanto, and the Disney one from last year, and she was talking about how she watched it with her daughter and how that movie like really spoke to her on all these levels about like the female matriarch of the family, like the
Yeah.
role they fill, and if it's not necessarily like a good one, like the pressure on them, but also if they can be toxic in some way. And it's all the stuff that I didn't really think about when thinking about the themes of the movie, but obviously it appealed to her and her family situation in such a way that it really spoke to her. So like
Yes. Oh
it
my
was
God.
neat
Yeah.
because I like obviously I followed the story and I got that, but I didn't realize like, oh well, the idea of like the matriarch of the family not necessarily being good for the family, and all those sort of things was like, like it's cool that they're out there creating these sort of things that deal with these subjects that seem really heavy, but do it in a way that kids can understand and also maybe help them deal with
Yeah.
if they're going through similar situations.
Yeah, absolutely. That movie, that's just an amazing movie as well. I mean, all the Pixar movies, I would could only hope to aspire to that level of, storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm just doing it all myself. But I think when you get like, you can have a group of people, and they're like, oh, what if this happens here? What if that happens? And I think they can create those kind of stories that it's just like, oh my God, all these aspects. But that was a particular story that it's these stories that haven't been told before. And I think a lot of times, especially in animation, has been a male driven
Oh, 100%.
industry for so long that it's, of course, women work in it. Like, of course, they're doing all these different things, but are they the main people telling these stories? And then to get that mother-daughter or even mother-grandmother story or relationship, it has to be a woman telling it, because there's going to be certain things that,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
only a woman's gonna know and be able to talk about, though. But I think there's so many relationships like that it's like was just an amazing story to come out, because it's not always this sweet, nice little Grammy
Yeah.
and this and
And
that.
it's always like the stern father who disapproves of the son, and you don't really often
Yes.
see the stern mother who doesn't,
Yeah, of course.
but
Yeah.
often usually it's kind of painted in a way that like at her heart it's all good, but when it comes to the random point that you're like, well, not necessarily. That those sort of toxic relationships happen through all the sexes.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
That it's not unique to just the male experience. It's like, it was very cool. It was very neat, and this sounds amazing. I'm very looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah,
What's
thank
what's the
you.
release going to be? Is it going to be like a theatrical thing, or is it going to be?
I'm not sure yet. I'm still working on all of that. Looking for, distributor and things like that. But really, it's just like, this is my first time doing feature film, and I'm just trying to like kind of muddle my way through it.
That's how
It's
you learn.
Yeah, that's the only way. It's weird because I think a lot of people look at like artistic people doing anything and just be like, oh, like, how did they learn to, or how did they get there? And it's like, I don't know. Like, the
I'm
students
amazed that
ask me.
most people I talk to in the show that like work for Marvel or something are like, I don't know, just I did some stupid little comic sometime, and then the right person saw it, and then suggested me for something, and here I am now. It's like, it's all it
Yeah.
takes.
It's
I love that the Canadian Film Board is sponsoring the movie too.
Yes, yeah.
There's this interesting article I read recently about like in the 70s and 80s how they have this Canucksploitation movies, they call them, which was, there's a time period in like the 70s and 80s where there were real tax credits for people to make like horror movies in Canada, and they made a bunch of
Oh,
weird ones. Like David Cronenberg came out of that.
no way. Oh my
Yeah,
God. Now I'm gonna have to go find all this stuff out. That's
I
amazing.
think it was Rabbit or Slither was paid for by the government. Like it was sponsored by, like, it was
Oh
all
my
government money.
God.
In fact, it caused a big stir because a lot of people were upset that their tax dollars went towards making this horror movie that they didn't particularly like. It's a pretty weird movie. I love all this stuff, so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm on board. I'm happy if my tax dollars went to that, more of that, I'd be very happy. I'd be like, please give it to that, instead of, I don't know, stupid guns or war machines or whatever else you're putting in.
Oh God.
Yeah, give Cronenberg more money. That's all my tax.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. So, any other projects on the go besides the book and the film?
Yeah, no, this is my main thing is working on the film. I just like literally got the funding in March, and I just found out that I got more funding from Telefilm.
Oh,
So
awesome. Fantastic.
yeah, so it's awesome. It originally, this had started out as just a short, and that's the kind of the idea I had, and then just there was just this Canada Council thing that was like, you can apply for a feature film. I'm like, well, maybe. Like, I just was like, whatever. I probably won't get it. Just fill this stuff out because I already had this idea, whatever. And then I ended up getting it. And it was just kind of like, what? Like, okay, I don't know how to make a feature film, but I guess
So
I'm gonna learn.
you're doing everything. You need to source like voice actors and do all that stuff too.
Yeah, the way that I wrote it, I try to keep that in mind, that I might have been doing everything on it if I hadn't gotten more funding. So it was all narrated, very little voice
Oh,
acting. So it's all, there is narration to tell a little bit of the story, but I'm relying a lot on just the visuals to be able to see what's happening. And it also helps so that I can do it. Well, the film's going to be in Wolastoqey, so it's actually going to be the first animated feature film in the Wolastoqey language.
oh
So
wow, that's amazing.
yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's a lot of like, say, as same with many of the indigenous languages. There are very few people that are left that are fluent speakers, and for Wolastoqey, there's less than 100. So I was like, less than 100, like that's gonna be like all of my relatives. So I asked my aunt if she would she translated the whole film for me, and then she was the narrator, which
Oh,
lent
awesome.
itself well to the film.
That's fantastic.
So I wanted the narrator to be, or maybe we think, well, in the end, it's an older version of the fox.
Okay.
So she's gotten older, and she's telling this story
Wow, that's
the way
awesome.
that my grandmother would have told us a story when we were
Oh
kids.
man, this is fantastic. I'm super
Yeah.
excited for this.
Yeah.
You know when it'll be out? Do we have those dates yet, or is that
I'm hoping next year. Hoping for fall release. But yeah, I still have to, get distributors and stuff. Yeah, what I've traditionally done is film festival circuit, and my films have done really well, doing that. Usually it's about a year that you have as a lifespan for a film in the film festival circuits, but I've had my last film, I Am the Warriors, still being screened in festivals, and it came out in 2021. So it's like going on 2 years now.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I'm not sure. I'm like, this may be film festival, maybe it's something else. I'm gonna try to, get into looking at distributors and things like that and see how far I can take it. I don't know. I really don't know anything about it at all.
But
So
that's exciting if you like. Who knows, right? The sky's the limit.
yeah. That's the thing. I don't know, and I don't know what my limitations are. So that's another good thing.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic.
It never hurts to ask for anything. So I learned that thus far.
Awesome. Well, I don't take any more of your time. Just wanted to say thank you for being on the show. It was awesome talking to you.
Absolutely. It was awesome talking to you too. Like, this was great. I can't believe you have 2 podcasts. That's very geez, when do you have time to relax?
Yeah, I do a lot of things. So my friends often say that to me because I have a job. I'm a graphic designer. I have my own business doing that. I'm an actor as well. I'm in the union. I've done stuff in Halifax.
No way. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Like, do you voice acting and stuff too?
A little bit. I wish I could do more. I auditioned for it a lot, but I just never gotten anything.
Oh yeah. Well, geez, I'll have to keep you in mind.
Please
Most of my
do.
stuff's Indigenous, but at the same time, try to find as many Indigenous people as I can, but sometimes you can't for a particular voice to fit a particular time and
For
all
sure,
that
yeah. Well,
stuff,
I'm always open to that.
Yeah. And you're a wrestler too. I saw that.
I was gonna say I'm a wrestler as well. I host the trivia nights. I do a lot of little things. So
Oh my gosh, you're just
this actually kind of started as a COVID thing. I just wanted to. I started off as I would give say a new Marvel movie came out and it would be well, who's that character? So I do a little podcast, like half an hour episode about who that character is, like what their history was. And then I thought, and then I'm a big fan of Mark Maron's podcast, WTF.
Yes,
So I never missed an episode of that. And I was like, well, it'd be cool if every once in a while I had someone in the comic industry on. And I know some people just through comics world in Halifax and stuff that work for Marvel and some other places. So I started with them. And then I just grew to like doing that way more than the other stuff. So I just got rid of the other stuff and now I just do the interview stuff. So
that's awesome. Well, geez, yeah, I appreciate being on the podcast. That's great. I love talking about comics, art, all that stuff, everything. It's great.
We'll have to revisit it again sometime in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, yes.
Awesome.
That would be awesome.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Tara. I'll catch you again soon, hopefully.
Awesome.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
There it is, my conversation with Tara Audibert. Thank you very much for tuning in, and a huge thanks to her for being on the show. Also for teaching me how to say her last name correctly, because I definitely would have said Audibert or Audibert or something that was kind of close, but not close enough. And she said she answers to anything, but having a last name like my own, Mayette, which is mispronounced constantly, I can certainly relate. So I didn't want to do that to her as well. So glad, super happy she's on the show. Had great conversation. Very much looking forward to seeing what that movie's going to be like and seeing what she does next, because we need more bubbly, fun, creative types out there to get bring their own unique perspective to the world, and especially ones that have voices that have history of the things you may not be familiar with. And I think that's what makes good art, is sort of immersing yourself in other cultures and other ways of life that you may not know. But their stories can definitely open your eyes to the much larger world, but also to all these experiences that you may not understand, but with some context can enter into and enjoy thoroughly. So can't wait for that one. It's going to be a really good one. I feel it in my bones, deep in my plums. But big thanks to Tara for being on the show. Next week, in 2 weeks' time, we will have our next episode. Still working on our guest. Tara pointed one towards me, which sounds awesome, and I have a couple other ahead of that person, so we'll see how that pans out. But I did meet some cool people at the East Coast Comic Expo, and hopefully we'll be seeing some of them come up on the show sooner than later. Also, be sure to check out our sister podcast. I mentioned on my talk with Tara, that would be the X-Rated, the X-Men Anime Review Show, in which me and Davin Skellhorn discuss all things Fox X-Men cartoon from the 90s. So we are currently finishing up season 4, and then we'll be on to the final season, season 5, and then probably a hiatus or another type of show until we get to the opening of the new season, which should be 2024. So be sure to tune into social media in the coming weeks for an update on what our next guest will be. And in the meantime, have fun, stay safe, happy Canada Day. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, which means you're left wide open. And I will catch you in a couple weeks' time. The Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.